Welcome to M&A Minute. I'm Bill Gullen, president of Finch Brands, a real-world brand consultancy. And so M&A Minute today is a bit of a refresher. There is longer form content that we've created about this, and we're going to focus specifically on the identity choice, nomenclature, and logo in the wake of M&A activity. So if one company acquires another or merges with another, there are four main approaches to consider as it relates to how to handle master brand, corporate brand identity. There are gradations or flavors of each of these four, but for the sake of our brief M&A Minute format, I'll summarize the four different directions. Importantly, before I do, the right answer in your case or in any given case is entirely situational, and it's based on factors related to category, related to corporate culture, related to the nuances of customer and prospect buying decisions. And so there's a lot of different things to think about. Here are the four. The first is no change. That is when an acquiring company leaves the brand of the acquired company alone and creates a house of brands approach that maintains a distinctive name and look and feel, and also sub-brands after the deal is complete. It is generally best used in consumer categories where there is strong brand awareness, or in mature categories where the brands in question are very clearly differentiated and positioned to different customer segments. One example of this is when Procter & Gamble, for example, which has been very aggressive with M&A activity, Gillette and other big acquisitions, their model is to create strong sub-brands. And so even when they make an acquisition, there's a lot of sort of back office consolidation that can take place, but the brands remain distinct. And it is their belief that because all these brands are so well delineated, how they're positioned differently, that ultimately if those brands compete against one another and don't have an obvious linkage, that's in the best interest of Procter & Gamble. And all the checks go to Cincinnati, but the brands more or less continue to operate, maybe not, again, behind the scenes, but in a market-facing way, in distinctive ways. So that will be the no change approach for M&A identity and for sort of the top level of the brand architecture. The next one is called fusion. And this is where a merger or an acquisition transaction happens, and there is some integration of brand identity assets into an evolved identity. ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil. This approach is typically geared towards managing risk, more so perhaps than activating potential. They do not want the loyalties of customers or of teammates of the acquired entity to be alienated by the departure, the disappearance of the identity that they've sort of the flag that they've been marching under. Fusion does bring forth something new, but it does in an overt way reference the key components of a transaction in ways that connect to heritage and to tradition. So if you look at Exxon and Mobil merged, rather than create something new or rather than elevate one or the other, ExxonMobil became the name. And that has upside, the connection to heritage, while simultaneously suggesting something new. It conveys that everyone within these companies have their fingerprints over the new identity. But one of the downsides of fusion is that it can be clunky. All of a sudden, you're dealing with syllables. You're trying to bring colors and icons together. And so fusion, again, has its place and its time, but it also has trade-offs. The third predominant direction is what we might call stronger horse. And that's where one brand, which is often the company that initiated the transaction or the largest and sort of most widely known player in the deal, is the name that is elevated. That's a simple and clear and efficient way to deal with transition, but there are risks there too that are fairly obvious. The brand equity and the allegiance of the names that may be sunsetting. That name goes away. Customers may be confused. Customers may not be either aware of or eager to become part of the larger entity. And Stronger horse requires a lot for that reason of significant communication to both the team internally as well as the marketplace. The fourth is a new brand that's developing an entity that is new on the wings of a transaction. And this is usually an approach that's most appropriate in categories that are undergoing a high degree of transformation. It's an oldie but goodie example, but when GTE and Bell Atlantic merged, they were both broadly known and generally well-regarded old line, long-distance phone companies. But they were envisioning a future of telephony that was really moving in the direction of mobile. So even though both of those brands were really well known, there was such a transition taking place, and really the new company was formed to take advantage and to lead that transition. And so it made sense to create something new, and that's what led to Verizon, which was a result of that transaction. This approach is costly and time-consuming. It's risky. But it also has the greatest ability to create something that is perceptually new and innovative, and to track the further direction of a category, as well as to signal that the combined workforce is really working together to cross-pollinate ideas and best practices and create something that is new. So as I mentioned, there are flavors of each. Taking fusion as an example, sometimes when identities are fused in terms of nomenclature, there are new logos and look and feel created. Sometimes a logo may sort of be joined together, but there's something different with nomenclature. Sometimes with Stronger Horse, there's what's called the reverse Stronger Horse, where the acquired company becomes the name. One of the famous ones, again, an oldie but goodie, but was when First Union Bank acquired Wachovia. First Union was much larger and much more widely known, but also had some perceptual baggage, whereas Wachovia did not. It was a regional bank that was well regarded in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It wasn't broadly known, but it did have positive equity in its market, and it had a sort of really evocative logo and look and feel. And so when First Union made that acquisition, they ultimately moved forward with the Wachovia name for a period of time, which was and First Union went away. Now that obviously became Wells Fargo, but for a period of time, that was a reverse Stronger Horse. So anyway, I'm blathering. This is now M&A Hour, not M&A Minute. But these are the four rough approaches that one can take at the identity level on the heels of a transaction. And again, they each have their place. There's always strengths and upside as well as trade-offs. So let's leave it there. That's M&A Minute for today. Thank you for joining us.